So, Meka, you've been practicing your new mating call. Show me what you got.
Here we go.
What the hell is that?
I'm a peacock.
Oh, dear. It's okay, but it might not qualify as an official love language.
It's a foul love language.
But love languages aren't really about mating calls at all, are they?
No.
No.
That's lust, not love.
So that sound was your lust language.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Crap, I think we're in trouble. Anyway, let's talk about love languages, shall we?
Let's go.
All right. Welcome to Thriving Between the Lines, the podcast that examines personal development books through the lens of intersectionality, making self-help content more accessible and relatable. I'm life coach and mouthy broad with opinions, Leslie Via Garcia.
And I'm Meka, just a funny fella.
And together, we're not just reading between the lines,
We're
thriving between the lines. We're coming to you from Mianjin, land of the Yagara and Turrbal people, where sovereignty has never been ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So, Meka, who do you love these days?
Well, at the moment, romantically,
Yeah.
I have a partner that we've been together for over 10 years. That's the only person I'm seeing right now.
I didn't know you'd been together for that long, since we barely know each other.
I mean, he's been with me along my whole transition journey. Been
That's
with
wonderful.
me since before then. Yeah, so it's a special relationship.
And he's your only partner at the moment?
Yeah, just exhaustion and life and a lot of particularly moving parts, I was about to say, literally.
So to speak.
Yeah, it's not the best time having a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, sticking with the people that I have the energy to treat properly and the way they deserve to be.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Oh. What about you, Leslie?
Well, I am married, so I have a partner who I live with, and we have a child together. My partner is non-binary. We actually just recently had our 11-year anniversary of being together.
Ooh.
And this year we will be celebrating 10 years of marriage.
Oh, wow.
I know. Which is wild. Nice. But I also have another partner over in the US. His name's Mateo. He's really cute.
It's a cute name.
Yeah. I don't get to see him often, obviously, because distance. But yeah, we still communicate online and stuff when we can. Again, it's the whole having the time to actually interact with people kind of keeps my romantic life fairly compact at the moment. As a polyamorous person, I don't date a whole lot these days.
Yeah.
There are people who I do see from time to time locally, but no one that I would officially call a partner.
Yeah, yeah. And particularly with a kid as well, there's not a lot of spare time to be had.
Balancing my relationships with my parenting is one challenge, but Tony and I have a pretty good rhythm with that. The main thing for me these days is business and just managing my schedule around that. It doesn't leave me a lot of headspace to go out and date a bunch of people.
Yes, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of, even your downtime brain, it gets filled up. When particularly those early days where it's all like the flurry of the initial excitement.
Oh my gosh, new relationship energy. I don't have the luxury of having the space for that right now.
That's what I've been thinking about as well. I'm like, I'd like to date But also, I don't have that time for the like teenage excitement and over obsession and things like that.
Yeah, I would love to have that feeling right now. But I sometimes wonder what other things in my life I would have to neglect to leave room for that right now.
Yeah. And I think with the right people, you can start relationships and not get too carried away in that, particularly in poly situations. You can't just ignore the other people in your life.
Absolutely.
So I think it has to be a different approach.
Yeah. And that's where things like communication and understanding how to show appreciation to each other, to your partners,
Needs to be efficient.
Yeah.
No time to waste.
It's basically a big communication party, isn't it?
Very much so.
And that definitely comes into play in monogamous relationships as well.
Very much. And I think there's a bit more of a acceptance that you can just kind of let it sit and just try and get over it.
Yeah.
Which has never worked for anyone.
No. Communication in monogamous relationships can benefit a lot from looking at polyamorous relationships, although that's not the main topic of our discussion right now.
No.
It's something to keep in mind because it's part of the lens that we're looking through this discussion at.
Yeah, we're coming into it as people who don't think the same way as the person who wrote this book.
Correct. On that note, Meka, tell us, what book are we talking about today?
The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts, by Gary Chapman.
Excellent. So this whole concept of love languages, how familiar were you with it before we started preparing for this episode?
I've heard a fair bit about it. I think probably time in church in my teen years.
Okay. Yeah, because you have some church history.
Yes, yeah. I was very church going as a teenager.
Okay.
And I had some family members that had read it, particularly just kind of trying to understand each other. And that was not from a romantic perspective either. That was just from a generally like, why do some people show affection in different ways?
Right.
But we're all pretty neurodivergent, so not surprised we're looking for an instruction book.
Yeah. And the fact that you were brought up with experiences within the church that fits with the overarching ethos of the book. Yes?
Yeah.
So Gary Chapman, do you know much about him?
No, nothing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Gary Chapman is a Christian marriage counselor.
Right.
In fact, that's where his marriage counseling experience has been housed. His writing is very much from that Christian conservative perspective. And I think a lot of people who are familiar with the concept of the 5 love languages don't necessarily realize that it comes from such a deeply conservative Christian base.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that myself until we started looking at this book. And I had a thought about it while I was looking at it. There was this whole movement going when I was a teenager, like, you didn't date. You went to youth groups and you're friends with people, and then you proposed to someone, you got married.
Oh, wow.
Like, dating was bad. Dating was frivolous and would lead to temptation. And of course you need a book on how to love each other because you married a bloody stranger. I know, that's just a thought I had because I was kind of weirded out by that even myself as a teenager. I was like, this seems weird.
And it's interesting too because this book is definitely written for married heterosexual couples. The language is very much about the husband and the wife.
With their very specific gender roles.
Oh, yes. Very, like, almost comically specific. If it weren't so tragic, it would be funny, right? So, what are the 5 love languages according to Gary Chapman?
So, we have words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch.
I'm not sure I like the way you looked at me when you said that,
Physical
Meka.
touch.
Hands off my book, Meka. Right. Yeah. So these are the 5 love languages according to Gary Chapman. Or when you first heard this list of love languages, what was your immediate impression?
I mean, I guess I was so familiar with them. I'm like, yeah, of course, those are the ways you can love someone.
Mm.
And then you challenged me with like, but what are your love languages? And I thought, oh yeah, I guess that aren't the things that I would specifically think of that would really make a relationship strong for me.
Okay.
So, yeah, I definitely can identify with some of those. Like, I like giving people gifts. And I love acts of service.
Okay.
Like when someone gives me an act of service. That
Okay.
sort of thing. But it's simplistic.
Okay.
It's a small number of things that you could do. And I'm sure even the things I've thought of, you could push into some of those categories. But
Okay. Yeah, when I first heard this concept years and years and years ago, my immediate thought was, well, words of affirmation, that's me. Like, that's my love language. It just seemed so obvious. I really enjoy being told that I've done something well. And I'm a big language person, you know that. You know, my background is in linguistics, language teaching, and all of that. And those things speak to me.
yeah.
But as part of our discussion today, I want to talk about whether this whole concept is valid in today's society, how it might impact marginalized communities, some of the problematic elements that we need to pull out of it, like how we can reframe some of these concepts for people who are wired differently in terms of how they relate to other people.
But aren't you supposed to feel incredibly uncomfortable trying to comply to relationship standards?
Yeah, love is all about pain. It's about sacrifice.
Or just having to mask constantly in front of the people you're closest to?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we always look for things that we like about each of the books we discuss before we get into the real dissection, right?
Yeah.
So, Meka, what do you like about this book, the concept of love languages, yada, yada, yada?
Well, I think it has actually been quite useful for me and for my family, because before looking into this book, we were struggling to find ways to relate to each other, to communicate in ways that work for different people, the way you feel about the situation. And so someone would be saying certain things or doing certain things that the other person just wasn't receiving in the way it was supposed to be. And so this helped me to stop and think, what does that person show, like, that they find appreciation in, and try and actually change the way I behave just a little bit, because the whole point is I want them to feel good. I want them to feel the love I have for them. So it was important to change the way I communicated.
So for you, it was about showing them that you love them in ways that they would be receptive to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a giving thing far more than the receiving.
And that's an important distinction, I think, because a lot of people take these concepts and they really embody the identity of their love language, and they're like, no, this is about how you love me.
That just seems a little too narcissistic. I mean, certainly acknowledging and being able to tell someone what you appreciate, but not bossing people around about it.
Yeah. And that's one way in which the concept has been helpful for me in my relationship history. That reminder that people are not mind readers. If there's something that someone is doing or not doing that is having an impact on your relationship communication, you vocalize those things or you express it in some way, so that you're not just sitting there going, oh, I don't understand what's wrong. Like, I love this person. I tell them all the time that I love them. It's like, okay, but maybe your words don't match your actions, or maybe they're looking for some other form of validation. And because I've always been such a words person, it has been good to be able to say to a partner, like, yeah, I really like when you tell me that you think I'm beautiful. Or I'll ask specifically, like, oh, what do you think of this thing that I just did? And it just helped clarify how we can connect and show value to each other. Yeah. So it's been helpful on that level. But in terms of going deeper than that, that's where the concepts start to get really, I don't know about that. So I want to talk about each of these love languages through the lens of intersectionality as people who are neurodivergent, the two of us, people who are queer, non-monogamous. We're open about issues that we've had throughout our lives with mental health related things, and so on and so forth.
Chronic illness comes in as well.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of what has impacted my relationships and communication is race and ethnicity. Absolutely. That plays such a huge part in the strength of my relationships.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that one. I don't have any experience with that myself.
Oh, I've got so much. Some people might look at this book and the concepts in it and really take it to heart and think, okay, this is a tool that I'm going to use to make my relationships better. And then it doesn't work because it doesn't go deep enough, or it doesn't consider the circumstances of people who don't see the world through Gary Chapman's very, 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 very narrow lens.
But I got you a necklace. You said you like gifts. You know I don't wear red.
And my gosh, it was a bit of a wild ride for me rereading this, because it's been years since I read this. And looking at it again through a much more mature, much more socially aware lens.
Been through more relationships and...
Yeah, much more experienced lens. I'm like, what the hell is this guy on about?
I wish relationships were that simple.
Wouldn't that be nice? All right, so shall we dive in?
Let's go.
Okay. Words of affirmation.
This one I have feelings about because I know I like it, but I feel bad about it. Like it's narcissistic or selfish.
Oh, well, okay.
I'm like, tell me how nice I am.
I want to read one little section from this chapter about words of affirmation. All right? And I want you to tell me what you think.
I have to be truthful. I haven't read this book in detail.
That's okay. That's okay. So this section of the book stood out to me specifically as a neurodivergent person. And I know that we've both had a lot of experience dating or with partners who were autistic, who had some other flavor of neurodivergence, right? So tell me what you think about this. This is in a section called Kind Words. Love is kind. If then we are to communicate love verbally, we must use kind words. That has to do with the way we speak. The same sentence can have two very different meanings depending on how you say it. The statement, I love you, when said with kindness and tenderness, can be a genuine expression of love. But what about, I love you? He writes it with a question mark, Meka. I don't know why. The question mark changes the whole meaning of those three words. Sometimes our words say one thing, but our tone of voice says another. We are sending double messages. Our spouse will usually interpret our message based on our tone of voice, not the words we use. Or not the words we use. Agree? Disagree? What do you think?
Well, interesting, because I want to be able to hear people's tone and what they mean behind their words, but I also need you to use the words that you actually mean.
Yes.
But certain jokes me and my partner have is one he's always used is, I tolerate you. And people hear that and they're like, that's horrible. Why would you say that? And I'm like, no. From him, that's like a romantic thing. It means I love you. So like, but it's words. It's not a tone. It's words with a back joke and story that means something else. But the amount of times people have been like, oh, I told you. I'm like, no, you didn't. You didn't use the words. Oh, but you should have worked it out. No, I'm not going to work it out. Use the words. Just say like directly what's wrong or what you want. Otherwise, I'm going to ignore it because I don't have the RAM in my brain to try and like work out what everyone's trying to pretend to say, not say.
Yeah. I get that way too. I just want to hear the very specific words. And sometimes, like when a partner will say something to me that I feel is a hint at something, it triggers something in me to double down on the need for clarity. I'm like, what are you talking about? Say that in more specific words. What do you really want?
Yeah.
Which isn't always great. It's not the best way to conduct oneself in a conversation sometimes. But it's also just a symptom of the discomfort that my brain feels when I'm being asked to take this extra step to interpret someone's words in that kind of a setting.
I've just gotten so much trouble in my life for interpreting things wrong. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Yep.
Like, if you're not big enough to tell me in words, then maybe, like, it's just not important enough.
So the next paragraph kind of goes into this a bit more. He writes, I would be delighted to wash dishes tonight. Said in a snarling tone, will not be received as an expression of love. On the other hand, we can share hurt, pain, and even anger in a kind manner, and that will be an expression of love. I felt disappointed and hurt that you didn't offer to help me this evening. Said in an honest, kind manner, can be an expression of love. The person speaking wants to be known by her spouse. She is taking steps to build intimacy by sharing her feelings. She is asking for an opportunity to discuss a hurt in order to find healing. The same words expressed with a loud, harsh voice will be not an expression of love, but an expression of condemnation and judgment.
But I found passive aggressiveness a great way to build healthy relationships.
Yeah. So reading the paragraph, it's not that I disagree with what he's saying, but one thing that is not present here is the recognition of things like the power dynamics that can come into play in some of these relationships.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of the blind spots in the whole nonviolent communication concept, right? If we're assuming that everyone is acting in an honest, open manner and with mutual respect and everything, conversations might happen one way and have like a positive outcome. But like, if you're constantly, and I'm saying this as a frustrated Black woman who's often just really impacted by racial battle fatigue and my PMDD, the fatigue issues that come with that, sometimes I'm just pissed. And I've been put in a position many, 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 many times throughout my life where it's like, no. You need to speak softly and kindly and gently. Then I'll listen to you. It's like, okay, when I do that, no one listens to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes to have that cut through in a conversation and to not feel like I'm just speaking into a void, the words will come out in a way that to some people reads as aggressive. And I use that paragraph as an example because it's illustrative of most of this book. And this is not a long book. It's quite a short book. But that's one of the early examples of this whole like oversimplification of like, this is how you speak kindly to each other. And it's like, well,
it's really specific to the people.
Yeah.
Because there's some people in my life who you got to be quite loud and direct so that they hear. And there's other people in my life I know that I have to keep the tone down, calm, and at a certain sort of thing for them to hear. Because otherwise, they've got trauma that if you use an aggressive voice, it's just going to like set them off and they'll go away in their head.
Yes.
But that's how like I get to know the people in my life.
And you're absolutely right. It's so dependent on how the people in the relationship actually operate. And there could be people like listening to this right now going, oh gosh, what is Leslie on about? Like, you're reading way too much into that one little paragraph, blah, 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 blah.
I was just seeing weaponized incompetence on the, I'm supposing husband's part there. Like,
there's a lot of that comes up in this book.
Yeah.
And it might seem premature for me to take that particular tone towards what he's written here.
Yeah.
But as we get further into this discussion, I think it will make more sense.
Because I also see myself in that. Like, I just sometimes am so off in my own world, I forget to ask, like, to offer my help or things like that, where it's not meant badly. So
Exactly. If someone says, I was disappointed that you didn't offer to help me this evening, legit, my response be like, you didn't ask me to help. It's like, sorry, but if you want me to help you with something, you need to understand I've got 1,000 thoughts in my head at any given time. You need to ask me for help.
yeah,
Otherwise, it might not happen. And it's not because I don't want to help. It's because I've got 1,000 things on my mind all the time.
yes. This thing came up when I started mixing with people from different families, different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, because we don't all grow up with the same expectations of each other.
Yeah. To me, the most effective way of communicating with a partner is to be, measured as needed, but to be direct, to be clear. Clarity is kindness when it comes to communication. And that's one way in which words can be weaponized, either by being used or not used in some contexts. But for me, the most powerful use of words in relationships is to show appreciation. I'll often ask someone I'm with, or I'll talk about something I've done, and I'll be like, oh, are you proud of me? And I'm always like, oh, praise me, please. Praise me, praise me. And it lights me up inside.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's a bit sad that the culture I was brought up in, at least, it was considered shallow and narcissistic to expect or to even receive praise. It was like, oh, great. People would give you a compliment and you were supposed to say, oh, no, that's not, don't say that.
And that's so much more of a thing in Australia than, say, in the US, isn't it?
Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole tall poppy syndrome thing.
Yeah.
The whole, don't be up yourself, mate.
Yeah, because my mum actually said to me when I was a teenager, she's like, oh, it's actually kind of like if someone offers you a compliment, you should accept the compliment. And so I practiced, because people would be like, you're pretty or something or whatever. And I would have to go, oh, thank you, even though I wasn't that comfortable about it. And then I started getting people, they would give you a compliment. You accept the compliment and then be like, oh my God, you're so shallow. I'm like, Jesus, what am I? Can't win.
Yeah.
Can't play those games.
Yeah. The way he writes about offering praise and ways to affirm your husband or wife, they're very, very gendered. For me, the most meaningful words of affirmation are in relation to the work that I do, are in relation to my activism, and are in relation to how I move through the world as a Black Latina woman. That's what really means something to me. For example, when Tony, my spouse, compliments my natural hair, it's not just like, oh, wow, how interesting. I want to touch your hair. Blah, 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 blah. Like random strangers in the street, too. But it's like that genuine feeling of like putting their hands in my hair and like playing with my hair and complimenting the commonalities between my hair and my daughter's hair when speaking to our daughter. It's like, you've got hair like your mama. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it being something that you do or have that is of value to you.
Yeah.
Things like housework and stuff are things you do out of being forced. Like, you have to do this thing. And it's like, oh, you did the bare minimum. Good job. I'm like, yeah. And I never get to do anything that I actually care about. So thanks, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get into that a bit when we talk about acts of service, but that also touches on the whole idea of people meaning well with their words, but in a way that can actually be really cutting. People say things like, oh, you're so exotic. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not exotic. And they think it's a compliment. It's
like a bird.
Yeah, it's like, what? God, no, not that mating call again. Or they'll say things like, oh, you're really pretty for a Black girl.
Ew.
It's like, that is disgusting.
Gross. Jesus.
Or, oh, yeah, one of my personal unfavorites. Is that a thing? They say like, oh, you know, I've always wanted to hook up with a black chick. It's like, congratulations. Why are you telling me these things? That happens so much on dating apps.
Oh.
People who are like, ooh, I'd love to engage in some race play. I'm like, that is not a compliment. That is in no way affirming to me. If anything, it's
not something
disturbing.
Like, it's not something you can choose to be or not be, and therefore it's not a game. Like, it's not just some fun little kink for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you live as you your whole life.
Yeah. Like, the only scenario in which I would ever want to engage in race play with some random stranger is if they had, like, a reparations kink. I'd be like, all right, you're buying me coffee.
You pull out the flail.
Oh my gosh. Not in that sense. It's
Hey,
like, you know what? You're
it's
going to
what
buy me all
they're
my
into.
books.
Don't yuck their yum.
Yes. Okay. It's like, I'm doing this for you, honey.
Yeah.
You want to buy me all these personal development books.
Yeah. They need you to...
You want to make up for the sins of your ancestors. This is going to help you evolve.
They're like, please fix my white guilt.
Oh, God.
If you do this, I can just go on with the rest of my life and never think about it again.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know about that. And I realize that saying this, I am taking the risk of completely misrepresenting myself. But
we just make a funny.
It's jokes, man. It's just a joke, bro.
Remember it. Oh,
Yeah.
you're such a white snowflake.
Oh my gosh. All I'm saying is that I am exhausted.
Yes.
I'm carrying a lot of ancestral and generational trauma. I just need a break. The one thing that he definitely doesn't dive into in the book, because he doesn't go in depth into anything, the impact of trauma in the need for words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like with some of these couples that he uses as illustrations in the book, I want to be like, all right, what happened to this person that they constantly need validation? What happened to this person that they need to have their masculinity reaffirmed over and over and over again in that cisgender heteronormative context? What is it in this relationship that makes the woman think that the most meaningful compliments she can get are the ones that affirm her status as someone who is submissive? Before we get into acts of service, let's talk about quality time.
Mm-hmm.
So one section that really stood out for me, and it created such visuals in my mind, was the section titled Focused Attention.
Focus, yes. I have lots of that.
Like, I could barely finish, like, reading the headline before I got distracted by some shiny object. And it wasn't any offense to the writer. It's just my brain has a different relationship with focus and with attention. But yes. So, talking about quality time, saying it isn't enough to just be in the same room with someone. Well, for me, it sometimes is. A key ingredient in giving your spouse quality time is giving them focused attention, especially in this era of many distractions. It's worth noting as well that this book, it's been updated a number of times, but this is the 2010 edition. So
He didn't even know about TikTok.
Yeah. How it would look now would be a couple sitting next to each other and just someone's trying to talk and the other person's scrolling through their phone, and it might be really annoying and this and that. But for some people, that suits them just fine, right?
Sending each other memes.
Yeah.
It's quality time.
Exactly. I'll read you this section and tell me if you can guess which part really triggered me about it. All right. By quality time, I mean giving someone your undivided attention. I don't mean sitting on the couch watching television together. When you spend time that way, ABC or NBC has your attention, not your spouse. What I mean is sitting on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other and talking, giving each other your undivided attention. It means taking a walk, just the two of you, or going out to eat and looking at each other and talking. Have you ever noticed that in a restaurant, you can almost always tell the difference between a dating couple and a married couple? Dating couples look at each other and talk. Married couples sit there and gaze around the restaurant. You'd think they went there to eat. Okay, so which part of that triggered me, Mika?
All of it.
The specifics.
But like,
okay, the thing that really like jumped out at me is this whole looking at each other idea.
oh, the eyes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I get this glassy look in my eyes when I'm made to pay attention because my mind has to drift off to keep itself entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just talking doesn't work.
Yeah. He's obsessed with eye contact. It comes up so often in this chapter. It's like whatever you're doing to show that you're appreciating someone, you have to be looking at their face, look into their eyes, count their eyelashes, whatever it is. And I don't function that way. When I really feel genuinely safe and comfortable with someone, one of my natural tendencies is to not have to look at them. It's distracting.
Exactly. I know I've made a friend when I can sit there chatting to them and looking down at my craft and they like it and they're happy and they don't take offense.
Yeah.
Also, this guy, I bet, is one of those people who's like, I don't like cats.
What?
People like dogs because they look you in the eye and enjoy it. People don't like cats because cats get upset and freaked out when you stare at them in the eyes.
Huh.
At least that's my experience. Dogs use their eyes to be all like, I love you.
There you go.
Cats do too, but like they're not quite.
But dogs also use all the love languages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie, you look so beautiful today. Oh, thank you.
I mean, we all know if dogs could talk, they would.
Yeah.
They would be all like, oh my God, you're the best ever.
Yeah, or they'd be absolute perverts. Okay. There have been times, I remember the last time my parents came to visit, I was sitting on the couch with my dad, and we had a full-on, like 3-hour discussion with not a single moment of eye contact.
Yeah.
We were sitting on my couch, just like looking at the walls, looking at wherever. I don't know what he was looking at. That's his business. But it just doesn't feel like a necessity.
I actually find discussions stagnate in the people I hang around or my family if we are made to sit there and engage and like look at each other. Whereas if we're doing something else, suddenly we can talk.
I find that the conversation goes so much more naturally if I am allowed to function in the way that my brain naturally functions.
Yeah. Exactly.
If I feel like I'm being forced into masking, that's not a recipe for intimate connection for me. It's just not.
Yeah, it's basically I'm just getting exhausted, so I have no energy left for the conversation.
Yeah. And it also creates a weird power dynamic again. It's like I am submitting to this person because I don't want to be impolite.
Yeah, and I guess I also have just given up on trying to be in relationships with people like that, and luckily there's not many in my life in positions that are immovable.
Yeah.
I mean, got some family members that really like you to be on attention and make eye contact, but I don't have to see them that much. No. There's not many people in my family that are neurotypical, so it's fine.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, where these books, they don't have to make room, or they don't have to include every background, every perspective in order to have any sort of value. But the fact that they don't make room for the possibility that other people see things differently, that's what's really annoying. He uses this paragraph to illustrate like doing something that your partner enjoys even if you're not completely into it. Mm-hmm. He says, one of Emily's favorite pastimes is browsing in bookshops, from sprawling superstores to hole-in-the-wall used book dealers. Husband Jeff, less of an avid reader, has learned to share these experiences with Emily and even point out books she may enjoy. Emily, for her part, has learned to compromise and not force Jeff to spend hours in the stacks. Aw, good little girl. As a result, Jeff proudly says, I vowed early on that if there was a book Emily wanted, I would buy it for her.
Oh.
Jeff may never become a bookworm, but he has become proficient at loving Emily. I don't think that's illustrating the point he's trying to illustrate when it's like, Jeff fixes things with money.
And also, have you ever been shopping with someone who doesn't enjoy it? You just feel constantly like you have to hurry and that you're holding them up and they stand there like a bad smell.
Yeah.
I'm like, go away.
I don't like shopping even on my own. I detest shopping with other people for that reason.
I mean, I enjoy shopping, but also I hate people making me feel rushed and hurried and an inconvenience. Maybe she's not allowed to go out by herself.
Yeah. But it's also an example, one of many, many examples in this very short book of the wife being praised for lowering her standards.
Yeah.
For lowering her expectations. Like, the husband's just gonna husband, women be shopping, whatever. Yeah. And, like, just go easy on the guy. He's never gonna become a bookworm, but he can buy books for you, because men be provider.
They sound like a bad match.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like they could be a good match in some other ways. This is also one of the reasons that I really appreciate polyamory, right? My way of connecting with Tony is not to like shoehorn them into doing things that I want to do that they just have no interest in.
Yes.
I know who I can go to really indulge in that interest. Yes. In that thing that I'm passionate about. And then when Tony and I do come back together, what we are left with is the things that we enjoy in common.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. I get it. It's nice when you do things with a partner that aren't necessarily within your comfort zone, which aren't necessarily one of your core interests. And it can help you stretch as well. It can bring a lot of joy into that situation.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with that. But it's this idea that, like, for it to be a quality activity, you have to sacrifice.
Yeah, I would say that's more like they're compromising for each other.
Yeah.
That's a different thing to spending quality time together. And compromise is a big part of relationships for me, but that's not spending quality time. I actually think of watching TV shows with my partner where we have these funny little glances at each other when something happens on screen that reminds one of us of the other person or someone we know. Yeah.
And if you look at it from a non-elitist perspective as well, it's like the kind of content you consume on a screen is often like it's a work of art in its own right. It is a piece of creativity that can be interpreted, enjoyed, with people that you appreciate.
Yeah.
Like, that can still be a quality activity, especially if y'all have just been working and are exhausted and all you can muster is lying on the couch or lying on the bed and having some Netflix time. Like, that's okay.
When you're being forced to have a conversation when you're so exhausted, your brain feels like it's made of ice cream.
Yeah, and if the other person feels unloved because of that, sometimes it's not just about like, oh, well, you just need to speak each other's love languages. Sometimes one of you might need therapy. It depends on the situation, but not once in this book does Gary Chapman suggests that one or both of the people in any of these dynamics, some of which are very toxic, need psychological help or should consider psychological help.
Yeah.
Not once. It's all like, I know what will fix this. Speak each other's love languages. Or, little woman, speak your husband's love language. Make yourself smaller.
And also just from like chronic fatigue perspective, sometimes you just need help overall in every aspect of life. And that's not available to everyone.
Yes.
And so either you're going to have to accept that you're going to have a partner that is exhausted all the time. If you can't step up to help, you can step up to help, or you just have to find another way to appreciate each other.
I feel like you're an acts of service person, aren't you, Meka?
I'm a accept me as I am if you can't help Like, I guess something that bothers me that has happened a lot of my life with many different people in my life is comments on my deficits when those deficits could so very easily be overcome by someone else stepping in to help in that way.
Yep.
Because I have a lot of deficits, but I have a lot of gifts as well. And in a lot of parts of my life, people have been very happy to accept my gifts, but not step up to help me with my deficits.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about receiving gifts. Yeah. So, okay. Can I rant for a second, Meka?
Yeah.
All right. Good. So the chapter on receiving gifts starts with something that really bothers me in a lot of self-help content, right? And that is the notion of exoticizing foreign cultures to try to illustrate some point that doesn't actually dive into these cultures, right? So as I said, this happens a lot in personal development, in the world of well-meaning white people. You know, they'll fill their books or their content with these little stories of how they traveled to some mysterious faraway lands and had these encounters with cultural people. But then they won't actually include perspectives from these people. They won't name these people a lot of the time. They won't bother to amplify the voices of people within their own communities who have different cultural backgrounds. They'll invoke these cultural images, but they'll still write through an extremely narrow lens because it's like the far away exotic cultures, like that's safe. If you bring them close, it's scary. If you filter the encounter through a white lens, that's safe. And that very loose association with foreigners can paint them as open-minded people or people with broad horizons. But then the picture that they paint is sometimes worse than if they hadn't included them at all. Or you get these like magical brown person tropes to elevate the learning of the author. It's like the whole magical Negro thing, right? And it really bothers me. So I'm gonna read you two parts of this section since we're talking about intersectionality, right? This is the beginning of the chapter. I was in Chicago when I studied anthropology. By means of detailed ethnographies, printed descriptions of a particular culture, I visited fascinating peoples all over the world. I went to Central America and studied the advanced cultures of the Mayans and the Aztecs. I crossed the Pacific and studied the tribal peoples of Melanesia and Polynesia. I studied the Eskimos of the northern tundra and the aboriginal Ainus of Japan. I examined the cultural patterns surrounding love and marriage and found that in every culture I studied, and here's the big magical takeaway, gift giving was part of the love-marriage process. I'm like, okay. That's incredible. I'm so glad that all these brown and yellow people could teach you that. But on the next page, it's a section titled Juice for You. I took an anthropology field trip to the island of Dominica. Our purpose was to study the culture of the Carib Indians. And on the trip, I met Fred. So he gives him a name. Fred was not a Carib, but a young black man of 28 years. Great. There's a black guy in here. Now, what does he say about this black guy? Fred had lost his hand in a fishing by dynamite accident. Since the accident, he could not continue his fishing career. He had plenty of available time, and I welcomed his companionship. We spent hours together talking about his culture. So yeah, okay, so you mine this guy for cultural information.
Yep.
It's like none of this understanding of culture genuinely comes through in his other writing, but it's like, okay, great, awesome. Upon my first visit to Fred's house, he said to me, "Mr. Gary, would you like to have some juice?" To which I responded enthusiastically. He turned to his younger brother and said, "Go get Mr. Gary some juice." Now, Meka, the thing that happens next is probably one of the most, wow, this is so cultural, things that is often used as an illustration of like, this is a very different, fascinating people. What do you think his brother did?
Oh, asked a woman?
No.
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Okay. His brother turned, walked down the dirt path, climbed a coconut tree, and returned with a green coconut. "Open it," Fred commanded. With 3 swift movements of the machete, his brother uncorked the coconut, leaving a triangular hole at the top. Blah, blah, blah. So he hands him the thing. He says, "Juice for you." And he drank it. Because he knew it was a gift of love, because he was his friend, and to friends you give juice. there's like one more little paragraph to kind of close that encounter, and then you just never hear from Fred or Dominica or anyone else again.
The only part of their culture mentioned is that they drink from coconuts.
Yeah.
Like a huge majority of people around the world. Well, not majority, but a huge number.
But it's like, it's this random illustration of this little brown boy climbed a coconut tree to give me this gift because I was his friend.
I mean, offering a drink to guests is like fairly common around the world, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, that's not a couple. That's like platonic love, I guess.
Yeah. But then the way he talks about gifts going on from there, you know, there's a lot of also very gendered aspects of it, but different people have different relationships with gift giving. But of course, that brings up questions around consumerism and waste, depending on the kinds of gifts that are being given. It's like what we talked about in our last episode. If you're just buying gifts for someone because that is how you want to show love, but they don't actually want this stuff, sometimes it's going to end up in landfill. If you're buying a bunch of clothes that someone doesn't want, the waste, it ends up burdening people who are already underprivileged because the stuff ends up in landfills in their countries, or it ends up undermining the textile industries of the local communities because of all this like foreign imported donated crap that isn't very useful. And that can be a big problem. But if you are communicating, and that's the key to all of this, like, freaking talk to each other. Like, communicate with each other to figure out how you want to show love to each other. It's like gifts can also cause clutter in your own space. And like my ADHD brain, I get really overwhelmed when people like give me things.
Yes.
There'll be occasions, or even like when people give stuff to my daughter for her birthday, even if we specifically say, please, no gifts. It's like, oh, well, we just had to give her a little something. And it's like, you know, little things here and there, maybe not a big deal. But when everyone does it, then it becomes a big deal. Because then it's like, now I've got stuff I have to sift through. And my little brain cannot handle this.
And as well, if the kid's already seen it too, then they might not want to let it go. And that's just... And then they forget about it, but it becomes clutter.
Yeah. There are things in this book related to how much you might spend on a gift. And how, like, if you are a person of means, if you're happy to save your money and, like, invest it here and there, but you won't spend money on your spouse, you're spending on yourself by keeping your money and investing. Meanwhile, your spouse feels unloved. And it's like, okay, gifts don't have to be expensive, but there are a lot of people in the world who will insist on getting things, and the price that you pay for the things that you have is to them a marker of how much you love them. And rather than saying, maybe that's not the healthiest dynamic, you know, this guy's saying like, yeah, that tracks. It's like, just give them more stuff. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
And especially now in a cost of living crisis, it's like, it's not always, sometimes it is about saying, hold up, we're not doing the gifts thing. We're just not going to do it.
Yeah. It seems like when even just some of the basics of life are in desperate need, it sometimes almost feels offensive to be given a gift worth a lot of money when you're thinking to yourself, I'd just like to be able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this crap. I want to not, like, be destitute.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, why did you buy me this thing when we're struggling to pay for electricity, or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
But I'm going to read you my favorite paragraph from this section, because to me, it's such a beautiful illustration of, like, I feel like he so badly wants to say, like he's turning into Brian Tracy and wanting to praise excess and buying things and owning things, but also wants to kind of appear to not be that way. So here we go. Gifts may be purchased, found, or made. The husband who finds an interesting bird feather while out jogging and brings it home to his wife, has found himself an expression of love. Unless, of course, his wife is allergic to feathers.
This reminds me of my grandpa, and I love it. He went walking every morning, early in the morning, to get the paper, like, his whole life. And he would find little shiny things. He would always, like, find flowers on the way and bring them home for Gran, or just little things.
Yeah.
And Grandpa's his own type of interesting.
Yeah.
And so even though it's a bit odd, they always knew between each other that that's a special little love language.
Yeah.
I saw something shiny and brought it home for you. Little bowerbird.
Yeah.
And
Tony does that.
Yeah.
And our daughter does that. And it's really sweet.
Yeah.
But this is where it turns funny for me. For the man who can afford it, you can purchase a beautiful card for less than $5. For the man who cannot, you can make one for free. Get the paper out of the trash can where you work. Fold it in the middle, take scissors and cut out a heart. Write "I love you" and sign your name. Gifts need not be expensive. I was like, what memory is being triggered there? It's like, take a piece of paper out of the trash can where you work. You workaholic.
That, again, seems like that weaponized incompetence thing. Like, I can't make a nice card. I don't know how to press print.
It's like, I work too much. Oh, there's my wastebasket. I'll just pull something out of there. Not one of the fresh pieces of paper sitting by your printer. It's got to be the one out of the trash.
Yeah, with some old printing on the back.
Because this is how poor people operate. Mm-hmm. This is how the man who can't afford it operates. It's like, what is that?
One of my family members a Christmas ago did actually hear me when I was saying, I'm struggling to even pay bills. I don't really want presents. And so then they just put some money in a card and was like, there you go. If that's what you need. Yeah. And I was like, aw, you listened to what I was saying. That's so sweet.
When you really listen to someone's language around gift giving, then it can be a much more meaningful process.
Yeah.
I remember when Tony and I were getting married, one of the things that we were very clear on, and we made a little wedding website and everything with an FAQ, made it very clear about the no gifts thing, put links to videos about our beliefs around it, so there would be no question about it. But we also knew that people want to give in those situations. So we specifically requested recipes. We had a box for people to put recipes that mean something to them. And some people were really creative with these things. We specified no cookbooks, because again, that's just more stuff.
Yes.
People, some made lovely cards with the recipe, like very neatly illustrated. A friend of ours who does not cook provided a takeout menu. And it was really lovely because people were able to give us gifts, but in our language.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, when there's a no gift wedding, I just hand make them a really nice homemade card. And I'm like, haha, made you a nice thing anyway. Then I write nice things about them.
It's like, take that.
Yeah.
I'm writing nice stuff about you. Here's an example of a toxic dynamic that is used to illustrate something that's supposedly not toxic. So this is Doug and Kate, which is a couple who he encountered through his seminars and blah, 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 that kind of work. So Kate was talking about struggles that she had had in her relationship with Doug and not feeling loved and just not feeling appreciated. She writes, "For years, I tried to be a good wife. I did all the things I thought a good wife should do. I had sex with him because I felt like he stopped dating me after we got married and simply took me for granted. I felt used and unappreciated. When I talked to Doug about my feelings, he'd laugh at me and say we had as good a marriage as anybody else in the community. He didn't understand why I was so unhappy." He really glossed over that whole, like, I had sex with him because I knew that was important to him.
And then he laughed at her? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, run.
Yeah.
Run away.
Yeah. In my annotation to that, I just wrote yikes next to that paragraph. Yeah. And
if you open up about your feelings to a partner and they laugh at you, no.
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
But this is also what he said in defense. He said, okay, so he writes, yeah, he didn't understand why I was so unhappy. He would remind me that the bills were paid, we had a nice house and a new car, I was free to work or not work outside the home, and I should be happy instead of complaining all the time.
Women complaining all the time.
Women be shopping, women be complaining. He didn't even try to understand my feelings. I felt totally rejected. Okay, but then, Meka, this is where the magic happened, because they went to one of his seminars. One of Dr. Chapman's seminars.
Oh.
And this is what happened as a result. So Doug, in response to the quality of the seminar, this is how he responded. Yeah, he didn't actually talk to her about the ideas in the seminar. But then, that Monday afternoon, he came home from work and gave me a rose. Where did you get that? I asked. I bought it from a street vendor, he said. I thought you deserved a rose. I started crying. Oh, Doug, that is so sweet of you. Since when are roses a reward for sexual submission? This is what I want to understand.
And also, like, the most basic move ever.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I could think about something and do something personal. But
it reminded me so much of my relationship with my ex, to be honest. It was very emotionally abusive. And a lot of his, like, defense of his shitty behavior was like, you know, I pay for this, I pay for that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I didn't ask you to pay for those things. Like, I don't want those things. I want you to not be a dick.
Yeah.
But then it's like, just trying to throw money at the situation.
Yeah.
But here, Chapman doesn't say like, you two shouldn't be together. It's, oh, look, now that you've attended my seminar and understand each other's love languages, you can stop complaining now. You can stop complaining now because he bought you a friggin' rose.
Yeah, that won't last more than like a second either.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of people out there know what those roses mean. It's the I'm a piece of crap apology rose.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm sorry, baby, don't leave me. Next week, same shit, except it escalates.
Oh, but Doug wasn't finished. It didn't end at the rose. At one point, he offered to bring a pizza home for dinner because he thought that she might enjoy a break from cooking. On Wednesday, he brought each of the children a box of Cracker Jacks and had a small potted plant for me. Thursday night, he handed me a card with a message. I wonder if it was the card that was like made out of the trash paper. It was just a heart with a scribbled I love you on it. That was meant to help him express his love, even though he had trouble communicating it. And it's like, okay, so this guy, you know, he's trying to show her love, but I feel like too little, too late. It's like putting a candy coating on a piece of cow dung.
Yeah. It sounds like he doesn't know her at all.
Yeah.
They sound like strangers. A lot of it doesn't sound particularly personal. So they sound like default gifts, like socks.
And it's possible that there was a lot of meaning behind these things because, of course, we don't know this couple who I'm sure really exists. We don't know their actual dynamic. Yeah. But where it keeps coming back to for me is that whole, like, I had sex with him because I knew that was important to him, but I felt no love coming from him.
It's concerning.
It's very concerning. More so because of something that I'm going to read to you from later in the book.
Yeah. Did she express that being given gifts is what she appreciates?
Apparently, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he finishes each of these chapters with like detailed examples of things that you might consider doing to communicate in this love language, right? But so many of them kind of suggest that these couples aren't actually talking to each other. Like, observe the creature in its natural habitat. See the shiny things that take its attention. Make a note of it in your book. And then set up a parade of gifts based on this. It's like, just ask them what they want. Yeah. Let's just briefly talk about love language number 4, acts of service. This is something that you've touched on a couple of times in our discussion.
Yes.
Tell us, what is your relationship with acts of service and where do you think it comes from?
Well, for me, at the moment, it's definitely to do with chronic illness and just not being able to cope. And so the only thing I really want is to be at a better place where there is time for me to be able to get to the things that I value. Helping me to get to where I want to be is one of the greatest gifts anyone can give me.
I like the way you stated that.
Yeah.
For me, it's similar. Even though I, according to this model, I'm a words of affirmation person. I would say acts of service would be my second in the ranking.
Yeah.
Because there are things that I really like being done for me. Because it lessens my cognitive load. It helps me when I'm feeling like, let's say I've been hit with one of my occasional bouts of terrible vertigo. I can feel kind of helpless in those situations. And to have someone even just like step up and pick up the slack is so meaningful to me.
Yeah. It actually, I think of myself, I'm in like a tornado or a fire or something, and someone's standing on the other side just kind of like, here's a rose. I'm like, go away. I'm in a fire. I don't care about a rose right now.
Yeah.
I want someone to help me put out the fire.
Yeah, exactly. Or they'll be like, oh, you're so strong. You're so resilient. I really admire your strength in this situation. It's like, don't call me resilient right now. That's not what I need.
Don't stand there.
What I need for you to do is help put out this gosh darn fire.
Yeah.
Of systemic oppression.
Yes.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In the category of acts of service, he has a section labeled doormat or lover. More toxic AF stuff, right? Here we go. I have served him for 20 years. I have waited on him hand and foot. I have been his doormat while he ignored me, mistreated me, and humiliated me in front of my friends and family. I don't hate him. I wish him no ill, but I resent him. I no longer wish to live with him. That wife has performed acts of service for 20 years, but they have not been expressions of love. They were done out of fear, guilt, and resentment. Okay, so it's good that he recognizes that, but here we go. A doormat is an inanimate object. You can wipe your feet on it, step on it, kick it around, or whatever you like. It has no will of its own. It can be your servant, but not your lover. When we treat our spouses as objects, we preclude the possibility of love. Manipulation by guilt, if you were a good spouse, you would do this for me, is not the language of love. Coercion by fear, you will do this or you will be sorry, is alien to love. No person should ever be a doormat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We may allow ourselves to be used, but we are in fact creatures of emotion, thoughts, and desires, and we have the ability to make decisions and take action. Allowing oneself to be used or manipulated by another is not an act of love. It is, in fact, an act of treason. You are allowing him or her to develop inhumane habits. Love says, I love you too much to let you treat me this way. It is not good for you or me. That section is kind of weird.
Bit victim blaming.
Because it starts off like recognizing like, oh, you shouldn't treat people like crap.
Yeah.
But
you did make him do that.
If you allow someone to treat you like crap, then you have to examine like what has happened here in order to fix that relationship dynamic. It's like, or you could just break up.
Yeah. Like, by being overly submissive and tolerant, you made him be a crappy partner.
Yeah. You allowed him to keep abusing you.
Yeah.
So you've got to do something to fix the situation.
Yeah,
It's
like as someone in fear, it was your job to stand up and speak out.
Yeah. And he's not writing that from a feminist perspective. You know, it's not like he's saying, like, you know, find your voice, step into your power, which is its own, like, which can come off as very problematic in its own way. But it's like he doesn't go on to support the woman in this situation either. It's more about just like, no, you have to change your idea about the role of men and women in order to speak this love language better. It's like, this person is being manipulated and abused. It just keeps going back to like this toxic thing. We need to make it more tolerable. It's like, no. Sometimes you just need to get a divorce.
Yeah. I'm guessing he has a kind of belief that divorce is unacceptable. Yeah. Does he come straight out and say it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. However he wants to sanitize his views doesn't change the fact that he's not allowing for the possibility of these people just splitting up.
Yeah. It's not in their best interests sometimes to continue a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And especially where the gender stuff comes in, there's this repeated notion of don't nag your partner. And we know how the word nag has been weaponized against women. In the list for how to do acts of service, one of the examples here, number 6, he writes, if your requests to your mate come across as nags or put-downs, try writing them in words that would be less offensive to them. Share this revised wording with your spouse. For example, the yard always looks so nice, and I really appreciate your work. I'd love to thank you in advance for mowing the lawn this week before Julie and Ben come over for dinner. Your husband might even respond, where's the lawnmower? I can't wait. Try it and see. I want to meet this couple.
I hate that. It sounds passive-aggressive.
That is exactly what I wrote in the margins here. It's like, that's passive aggression. What's wrong with saying, hey, Julie and Ben are coming over, and you know how they're always like, dude, what's wrong with your lawn? I don't want to deal with that. So can you please, go ahead and mow the lawn?
Or, hey, it like makes me feel really proud to have a beautiful house to show our friends.
Yeah.
Would you be able to mow the lawn so we can have a really lovely looking house when they come over?
It is okay to be more direct there, and it doesn't equate to nagging.
Yeah, and particularly putting in what it means to you or what emotion it gives to you for that to happen.
Yeah. He paints men as such simple creatures as well. It's like, come on, let's give our dude some credit. Oh. But anyway, shall we talk about physical touch?
I think this is the one we've all been waiting for.
Do we need a safe word before we start this discussion?
Yeah, I need to reposition myself for this one. All right. I'm back.
I should give you a content warning, Meka.
Okay.
That this paragraph, it calls us out specifically.
Ooh.
You'll recognize it when I read it. But how do you feel about physical touch?
I struggle with touch. Like, it has to be organized and specific. Like, we are now going to touch. Now we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I don't even like kind of casual walking up and touching in the kitchen, that sort of stuff. Like, yeah.
And where do you think that comes from?
Neurodivergence, maybe. Also trauma. Yeah. I need to be in control of the touch.
Yeah. I don't like when people touch me unless they're a person that I'm in a relationship with or a person that I created.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I never give or receive hugs. There's some contexts in which I'm happy to just, have a nice hug. But once someone has crossed a significant boundary with me, it's like they go on my do not hug list. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that I necessarily decide consciously, but it's like my body just rejects physical contact with them. It's almost like I can't control it, but I also kind of don't want to control it.
Sometimes it's even if someone has not respected a emotional or social boundary, I'm just like, you don't respect my boundaries, so why would I let you be vulnerable with you?
Exactly. It's like if I don't feel safe emotionally with you, I will not feel safe physically with you. But this is one thing that he writes about physical touch in a section called "The Body is for Touching." Whatever there is of me resides in my body. To touch my body is to touch me. To withdraw from my body is to distance yourself from me emotionally. There are appropriate and inappropriate ways to touch members of the opposite sex in every society. Yep, there's that expression again. The recent attention to sexual harassment has highlighted the inappropriate ways. Within marriage, however, what is appropriate and inappropriate touching is determined by the couple themselves within certain broad guidelines. Okay, now these certain broad guidelines is something I find interesting because he does specify here that bodies are for touching but not for abuse. But it's this next paragraph that's about you and me. This age is characterized as the age of sexual openness and freedom. With that freedom, we have demonstrated that the open marriage, where both spouses are free to have sexual intimacies with other individuals, is, how do you think he describes it?
Abominable.
Close. Fanciful.
Oh, fanciful.
Those who do not object on moral grounds eventually object on emotional grounds.
What?
What? Something about our need for intimacy and love does not allow us to give our spouse such freedom. According to who? It's like, I get it. He's a monogamy guy. And there's nothing wrong with monogamy if that's what you've chosen, if that's what works for you.
And some people have a kink for jealousy.
It's true. But again, he's doing that Brian Tracy thing of, I say this as a fact, I provide no citations, no footnotes. It's what I think, and you're going to believe me because I say it with such unwavering conviction and authority.
Well, God said so.
Yes, that is true.
Except for all those parts where they had multiple words.
But that doesn't count because that's biblical
That's
openness.
That's old school Bible.
Yeah. What I think is funny about that is that, one of my partners is very much a physical touch person. And that's great. I provide them with physical touch in the ways that can happen. But if this person seeks physical touch from other partners, I'm very okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're getting more of what makes them feel valued and appreciated and just enjoying life.
Yeah.
I know it's not for everybody. I get that. I never paint polyamory or ethical non-monogamy as a superior way of relating to people. That's not my jam. But it's this idea that it's like those who do not object on moral grounds eventually object on emotional grounds.
I do know people who have totally rejected poly open relationship stuff because they've had bad experiences.
Yeah.
But that's not everyone.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with just humans being humans and people being bad communicators.
Yeah.
And just a whole lot of other just bad crap that goes down.
Exactly.
I do think some people are just naturally monogamous. Like, as far as I can observe, they're just happy in that.
Yeah.
There's people who don't have the energy for multiple relationships, or they just are very, yeah. I don't think that is an intrinsic part of polyamory that eventually you're all going to end up hurt and upset.
Yeah, yeah. Movies and television will tell you that that's the end result most of the time, but it's not always the case.
I like to just be super open, really communicative, talk about... I don't do the whole what's done there doesn't get talked about. I'm just like, I'm open. Everything's open for discussion.
Yeah. And one thing that I love about the polyamory community is that it's populated by so many different kinds of people from different backgrounds that speak openly about all their intersecting identities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard to walk into polyamorous spaces and not encounter someone who is queer, neurodivergent, from, you know, from some other community that has been marginalized. It's like a place where everyone comes together.
I've had a theory that it's because we didn't fit into the box that was made. We came to this from another perspective and went, what's going to work for us? And we didn't have to fit this little box that everyone else is trying to jam themselves into.
Yeah.
And why I figure in queer communities and this sort of thing, that's my experience. We were told that it was never going to be our reality to get married and have kids.
Yeah.
So, of course, we're going to look at different ways of living. And then you do, and then you get told, well, you're immoral for it. It's like, okay, all right. You already said I wasn't going to fit in.
It's like I've already been cast off. So, like, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And I think that is the experience of a lot of people. Not everyone, of course, but, like, it's an experience that run into a lot with people in the community.
Yeah, and our lives are sometimes messier as well. Like with me and my partner, he's a straight man who's found himself in a relationship with a man. I don't want to stop loving him just because we aren't necessarily everything that the other person needs.
Yep. For some people who desire physical touch and want that from their spouse or from their partner, they can still struggle with the receiving of that physical touch for reasons based around trauma, for reasons based around physical disability, for a lot of different reasons. And it's not likely that people in that boat will see themselves in this book and go, okay, well, or I know my love language is physical touch, but, like, you're not helping me here, bro. Like, what do I do about this?
I'm very much one of those people. There's been some trauma that means that I find it very hard to share a bed with people. I want to be intimate or to touch, but I'm very sensitive to touch from oversensitive nerves. I'm very over hot. Temperature just kills me. And so I have to prepare myself. There's so much preparation just to, like, feel okay to be intimate or touch or even just cuddle.
Yeah.
And so
this is part of your strategy to still enjoy this kind of interaction?
Yeah, but I kind of have even talked to my partner more recently about, could we schedule certain nights? Because he was saying he likes to have cuddles, not sex, times as well. And I said, could we schedule certain days where that's the thing? We have the aircon running. It's, you know, I have a warm shower or whatever to help calm my sensitive nerves down, that sort of thing. Or even take medication to help it. So, yeah, I just need to do things a bit different because that's important for him. And it's not that I don't want it. It's that it seems like such an effort sometimes, emotionally as well. Yeah.
And I like that you've developed that kind of protocol for enjoying that form of intimacy while being sensitive to your physical needs. And I think that's something that a lot of people can benefit from. And it also brings us back to the importance of communication.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to say to your partner, hey, I want this, but let's talk about some adjustments that we can make.
Yeah.
Some people really like spontaneity and they might not want to deal with all those things. And it's like, well, look, that's not going to work for me. And it's okay that it's not going to work for me in that way.
Yeah. I get a bit grossed out about body odor and things like that. I don't want to just jump into bed. I want to go clean up or have a shower first.
Yeah.
I'm very self-conscious about how sweaty I get from my being over hot all the time, which is a symptom. So we sometimes settle for just holding hands. Yeah. It's just like you have to find ways to get around that.
I have a very, very strong sense of smell. And that's something that I need to be cognizant of when I'm interacting physically with a partner.
Yeah.
If it means, hey, let's go take a shower, then let's do that.
Yeah.
I've had exes where, oh, no, like, you can't ever be spontaneous. It's like, no, I can't. Like, And I'm not going to. And the fact that you're trying to push me into a sexual scenario that I'm not going to be comfortable with means that I'm noping the heck out of this relationship.
Yeah, smells and things like that on other people are also, I can handle some, but still, I've come to the conclusion it's okay that I'm oversensitive to smell.
And there could be a number of different factors that contribute to that oversensitivity. But if you've got a partner that has those sensitivities, trying to drill down into the reasons and then trying to like fix those things could be pretty pointless. It's like, just talk about things that you can adjust so that you can both enter these scenarios comfortably.
Yes.
So that their physical comfort is taken into consideration, so that their emotional comfort is taken into consideration. All of those things.
Even if those things are fixable, you're probably not the right person to be fixing a deep-seated trauma.
Exactly.
That's a very long process as well.
Yeah. And you know, as a coach, again, like if I were working with a couple who had that kind of dynamic where they just couldn't come to an agreement on those things, that would be an opportunity to refer them on to someone.
Yeah.
That it's like, as soon as there's some hint of trauma around those things, it's like, all right, this is not going to be solved by learning how to speak each other's love languages better. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. So to conclude the section about the book, for someone who comes from any sort of marginalized community or has trauma in your history, if you do pick up any materials by Gary Chapman, it's important to understand the lens that he's looking through. The darkness of it, to me, was most clearly illustrated in the last section of the book. It's titled Loving the Unlovely, all right? And it's about this couple, Anne and Glenn.
Giggity.
Yeah. Now, this shit gets dark, all right? I'm not going to read all the pages that he writes about this, but I'll read the first section and then some points in the middle and then kind of the conclusion bits. So one day, Gary and his wife were walking down the road, and again, some random person approaches them, and this woman, Anne, goes up to him and says, "Dr. Chapman, is it possible to love someone whom you hate?" And he said, "I knew the question was born of deep hurt and deserved a thoughtful answer. I knew that I would be seeing her the following week for another counseling appointment. So I said, Anne, that is one of the most thought-provoking questions I have ever heard. Why don't we discuss that next week?" All right, so he kind of pushed the question for a future discussion. And then she basically told him a story about her marriage to this guy, Glenn. Glenn was not a nice person, and Anne had really been struggling with this person, okay? So let's see. He continues at some point saying, "She had told me the previous week that she had begged him to go for counseling. She had pleaded for him to read a book or listen to a speaker on marriage, but he had refused all her efforts towards growth. According to her, his attitude was, 'I don't have any problems. You are the one with problems.' In his mind, he was right. She was wrong. It was as simple as that. Her feelings of love for him had been killed through the years by his constant criticism and condemnation. After 10 years of marriage, her emotional energy was depleted and her self-esteem almost destroyed. Was there hope for Anne's marriage? Could she love an unlovely husband? Would he ever respond in love to her?"
So he advised her to get a divorce, right?
No. You know what he advised her to do? In this section, Love's Greatest Challenge, he writes, "I knew that Anne was a deeply religious person and that she attended church regularly. I surmised that perhaps her only hope for marital survival was in her faith." So he's telling her to pray on it and to think about her faith and to think about Jesus and, what would Jesus do? Yada, 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 yada. Okay. He starts asking these profound questions again. Some Bible verse that he references. Is it possible to love a spouse who has become your enemy? Is it possible to love one who has cursed you, mistreated you, and expressed feelings of contempt and hate for you? Would her husband ever change and begin to express love and care for her? And then he goes ahead and quotes Jesus again, saying, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Okay.
She's already been giving, and he's given nothing in return.
Yeah. So his message to her over and over again is like, work on it, stay, be better, and he'll start responding to you better. He says, have you talked about your situation with any of your friends? And she says, with 2 of my closest friends, she said, and a little bit with some other people. And what was their response? Get out, she said. They all tell me to get out, that he will never change, and that I am simply prolonging the agony. But I just can't bring myself to do that. Maybe I should, but I just can't believe that's the right thing to do.
She sounds like an abused woman.
Yeah. It seems to me that you are torn between your religious and moral beliefs that tell you it is wrong to get out of the marriage and your emotional pain, which tells you that getting out is the only way to survive. And you can guess which angle he presses on her. It's this whole like, no, God says you got to stay together. So you got to do whatever you got to do to make your marriage work. It's like she's being abused.
And can you imagine him having the same advice about a disobedient wife treating her husband that way?
Well, he then advises her to go through this experiment where she is doing things to be better for him, but also not telling him what she's doing. In a section called the 6-month experiment, it's all about what she can do to fill his love tank so that he'll treat her better. He doesn't advise her to get proper help. He doesn't advise her to leave this person. He goes, let's play around with your fate for the next 6 months and then see what he does. And keeps bringing it back to the Bible. It's like, what? No.
Well, women are there to be used up. Like, yeah. Who cares about her life and the short time she has on this earth?
Yeah, exactly. And this goes on for pages. So I can't read all of it. But some of the horrifying parts, and he says, if Glenn comes back with a suggestion as to how you might be a better wife, accept that information and work it into your plan. He also writes, begin taking more initiative in physical touch and sexual involvement. Surprise him by being aggressive, not simply responding to his advances. Set to have a goal to have sexual intercourse at least once a week, and then gives this formula for how many times to do it. And she even expresses how difficult this is going to be. Through the filter of Chapman's writing, expresses how difficult this is going to be. In the next 6 months, Anne saw a tremendous change in Glenn's attitude and treatment of her. The first month, he treated the whole thing lightly. Then he started getting more positive. He never came for counseling. This was all her responsibility to manage his behavior, and finishes the paragraph with, to this day, Glenn swears to his friends that I am a miracle worker.
Yeah, because he created the perfect submissive wife that's basically just an object for his desires.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Disturbing. So anyone out there who is looking for genuine guidance on how to connect more with a spouse or with a partner, I would not put all of your faith into this love languages concept.
No, put your faith in God.
Yes. But this discussion was probably longer than it actually took to read the book.
Yeah.
He doesn't expand on anything.
I'm actually kind of disturbed at I've never gone into it in depth. Yeah, I've only ever heard the top level stuff, but if I knew people were reading it and being given advice that's basically, like, that woman's in danger of being hurt, not just emotionally, but, like, in physically as well. People who behave in those ways do often progress.
Yeah.
They learn that they can have everything they want, and then when they don't get what they want, they get angry.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's dangerous.
It is dangerous. Women or people in relationships with partners who act that way, if someone tells you that you need to do something to make their behavior different, get out of that person's room. Get away from that person, because they do not have your best interests at heart.
Well, they're taking no personal responsibility.
Exactly.
They sound like they have no interest in changing.
Exactly.
And they put all of the onus of their life on other people.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yes. Whew. Okay, so that conversation got a little bit darker than I anticipated it would when I said to you, like, hey, let's talk about the 5 love languages through the lens of intersectionality.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be easier.
Yeah, me too, because for our book club, we talked about his book on apology languages, which again, like surface level, provided interesting fodder for conversation. But by then, that's probably the most recent book, it's gone through so many marketing filters that his message, which is deeply homophobic, if you look into his history, it's like, ooh. So Meka, as a person who is queer, neurodivergent, trans, has chronic illness issues, has mental health struggles, what are your love languages?
I've had a bit of a think about it, and in no particular order. Compromise is right up there.
Okay.
2 people have different life experiences. You're going to have to compromise. To do that, you need communication. My next point. Just so much communication, particularly with poly, non-monogamous relationships, even more important. Sharing burdens or filling each other's deficits. Working to make each other more whole. Like, it's something to me that is the most important about being with someone. Otherwise, being alone would be easier in many ways. Growing together. It's really important to me that you evolve and learn to see each other, but also people don't stay in one place. You have to keep on growing together, because if someone stays behind, eventually there's just a chasm between you. And then the last one, worshipping each other's bodies.
Ooh.
I know that sounds a bit weird, but...
So that goes beyond just physical touch.
Yes, it's not just the physical touch and being together physically. It's like a deep honoring and love, but also hunger. You know,
Yeah.
that genuine deep feelings for each other. Like, I'm not saying that I have to be the sexiest person in the world to you, but that appreciation for each other and enjoyment of each other's bodies has to be done with, respect and deep appreciation. So, yeah, that one is a little more complicated, and from the trans perspective as well, like, my body is different to a cis man's. So I guess I need to feel secure, and not just secure, but sexy. Like, I've been told by the media my whole life that trans people are unlovable and our bodies are disgusting.
Yeah.
So it takes a little more than just, oh yeah, like, you're right. Yeah, I might be a bit more insecure about that than other people, because I have had these messages and I don't need a load of convincing, but yeah, using your words, being specific.
Yeah.
What about you, Leslie? What are your love languages?
Ooh, Leslie's 5 love languages.
Yeah.
One really big one for me is listening. I appreciate words of affirmation, like those are important to me, but when someone can stop and listen to me without interruption, without judgment, that's something I don't take for granted, especially coming from the perspective of a queer, Black, Latina woman who has mental health challenges that I've been navigating my whole life, and other things that have led to people trying to shut me up for my whole life. When someone can really sit there and hear me and listen to my perspective, that is so meaningful to me. In relation to that, advocacy. Yeah. So someone who will actively put their own comfort on the line to support a community that I'm a part of, that makes me feel like they're doing the work to make the world a safer place for me and for people who identify with me. And it's like they're creating a soft place for me to land when I need to pull back from the storm every now and then. It's like they are lightening some of that load. That, to me, is a tremendous act of love. Food as well. When someone cooks for me, or when they share a mutual enjoyment of my cultural foods, that is an amazing connection for me. Like some of the Peruvian dishes that I make, one way that I show someone like you are a forever connection for me is, we'll cook some ají de gallina, or we'll make some papas a la huancaína, or whatever it might be. And it's like, okay, like this is forever. There is no escape. Photography. Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-huh. When someone will check in with me throughout the day with a picture of themselves or a picture of something interesting that made them think of me, that really means a lot to me, because it's like they want me to see the world through their eyes for a moment. And I like communicating that way as well, because also I have a passion for photography, for activism photography. I do close-up candid portraiture at these human rights actions. And that to me is a contribution to my community, because I don't do it for money. I do it to help amplify messages that need to be amplified.
Yep.
And so when someone has that kind of exchange with me on a romantic level, I just love that so much. Yeah. Especially with a partner living overseas. Sometimes photos are the best way to just light me up.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love it. And the final one from my list of 5 love languages is play. A shared playful spirit. And that's one thing that I adore about Tony. That's one of the things that we originally connected on, as parkour instructors, as overgrown children at play, and we haven't stopped. and that's something that we instill in our daughter. Every chance that you can incorporate play into your life, do that. When you can bring play into someone else's day that isn't going to derail them, do that. If there's a more playful way to do something in your day-to-day, do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, play is super important to me.
That's a really good one.
We've got a brick pit at home. It's not full of just Lego, but there's a lot of Lego in that room.
We used to have enough ball pit balls to fill the entire shed.
Oh.
And then we filled the spa with them.
Oh, that is wonderful. I think another reason play is so important to me is because sometimes I feel like I'm drowning under systemic oppression, racial battle fatigue, and this and that.
And
so
just stupid adulting.
Yeah, being an adult, it's like, come on, I didn't sign up for this.
They never asked me if I was in for it.
Yeah. So those moments where I can go into the park on a Saturday morning and make giant bubbles with all the kids, it feeds my soul. In saying that, I'd like to close up this conversation with a powerful quote about love. Is that okay, Meka?
That sounds lovely.
Does it? This one comes from Bell Hooks, an amazing activist, educator, amazing writer, all-around incredible person. One of her most famous works was all about love.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
that Bell Hooks.
Right.
She's incredible. So here's the quote. Knowing how to be solitary is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape.
Yep. I know exactly what she means.
That's an important element of this whole conversation. If you don't have that comfort with yourself, navigating any kind of relationship dynamic is going to be that much harder.
Yes. And pre-transition, I knew all about that. And then I started to like myself.
That's the way.
So, Leslie.
Yes.
Where can people find us?
Well, if people want to send us some love, you can go to my Instagram. It's leslievcoaching, Leslie with an IE. You can send us some messages that way. You can go to my website, leslievcoaching.com. If you want to get in touch, if you want to recommend some books that you want us to talk about, if you want to book a free life coaching consultation, that's the best place to do it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't forget to give us a rating for this podcast. As you know, we're a brand new show, so any kind of engagement really helps. But yeah, those ratings, those reviews, that's the key.
Yeah, we want to keep doing these things as long as we can.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Meka.
Thank you, Leslie.
And thank you to our listeners. We will see you again in chapter 4.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.